Picture this. One of the planet's most opulent hotels, the Ritz-Carlton in Riyadh, where spending just one night will set you back several $1,000s. But on this particular evening, luxury was the last thing on anyone's mind. This five-star paradise had been transformed overnight into something far more sinister. A prison. And the prisoners, these weren't your ordinary inmates. They were Saudi Arabia's elite powerful princes, billionaire tycoons, and ministers who were running the government just hours before. These were men whose single word could alter destinies, whose power seemed untouchable. Yet there they were, lying on mattresses spread across the marble floors of this gilded cage, trying desperately to sleep. The world watched in confusion. What on earth was happening? Was this a coup? Had some elaborate conspiracy unfolded behind the palace walls? No. This was something far more calculated, far more dangerous. This was a power play orchestrated from within the royal family itself, and the architect behind it all was a single young man, a man driven by ambition, and make no mistake, utterly ruthless. The world knows him today as MBS, Mohammed bin Salman. So, who is this Mohammed bin Salman? Really? Is he the progressive leader who granted women the right to drive in one of the world's most conservative societies? The prince who brought cinema halls to Saudi Arabia? Or is he the man accused of ordering the assassination of a journalist who dared to criticize him? Is he the visionary presenting dreams of futuristic megacities? Or the leader who launched a devastating war on Yemen, one of the world's poorest nations? Is he destined to be remembered as a great reformer, or does he possess all the makings of a merciless dictator? Today, on Legacy of Power, we're going to decode Mohammed bin Salman, discover how the world's most powerful young leader operates, how his mind works. I promise you today's episode will reveal aspects of Mohammed bin Salman you've never heard before. But first, you need to do something for me. Yes, hit that subscribe button, share this video, and spread it as widely as possible. We genuinely need your support right now. So, let's address the fundamental question. Where did Mohammed bin Salman emerge from? He's the seventh son of Saudi Arabia's current monarch, King Salman bin Abdulaziz, born on August 31st, 1985, to the king's third wife. But he remained largely unknown until 2015, when his father ascended to the throne, at a moment when Saudi politics stood at an incredibly precarious crossroads. And no, this wasn't like Pakistan's perpetual critical juncture. This was genuinely critical. Following the Arab Spring, the entire region was in turmoil. The ground beneath monarchies was crumbling, or rather, it had already crumbled. During this chaos, a man became Saudi Arabia's king who didn't truly wield the power. Instead, that power slipped into the hands of one of his sons. And not just any son, one for whom becoming king, or even crown prince, seemed virtually impossible. How did this transformation happen? To understand that, we need to grasp Saudi Arabia's unique and intricate succession system. In Saudi Arabia, the throne doesn't pass from father to son, but from brother to brother, exactly as King Salman inherited it from his half-brother, King Abdullah bin Abdul. Everyone naturally assumed that King Salman would follow tradition and appoint a senior, seasoned prince from the next generation as his crown prince. And initially, that's precisely what he did. Upon assuming power, he announced his half-brother, Mohammed bin Abdulaziz, as crown prince. He then appointed his formidable nephew, Mohammed bin Nayef, as deputy crown prince. Mohammed bin Nayef, known as MBS, an exceptionally influential figure, serving as the nation's interior minister at the time. He commanded Saudi Arabia's entire security apparatus, and yes, he was regarded as an extremely close and trusted ally of the United States. At that moment, MBS, Mohammed bin Salman wasn't even part of the conversation. He wasn't considered a significant prince within the Saudi royal family. He lived perpetually in the shadow of his powerful cousins. Perhaps this explains the deep-seated insecurity we still observe in Mohammed bin Salman today. He needs to accomplish something monumentally significant to prove himself, to his father, to the royal family, and to the entire world. But Bakhtin Mohammed bin Salman possessed one crucial advantage that everyone else overlooked. He was King Salman's favorite, his most cherished son. And this single factor would later prove to be his ultimate trump card. The young MBS had exceptional qualities. He was incredibly energetic, completely unlike the stereotypical Saudi princes. People say he was a workaholic, putting in 18-hour workdays. He's passionate about presentations, data analysis, and charts. He demands everything be done immediately, right this instant, and this very impatience would become both his greatest strength and his most significant vulnerability. But what was missing from a prince's upbringing that made him so impulsive and hasty? For that, let me reveal a dimension of Mohammed bin Salman's character that few people are aware of. Ben Hubbard's book, MBS, The Rise to Power of Mohammed bin Salman, discloses that MBS spent his younger years immersed in video games, particularly strategy games. Titles like Age of Empires, Call of Duty, and Final Fantasy, and we can clearly observe their influence on his worldview. He perceives the world as an elaborate game, where you must take bold risks, control resources strategically, and most importantly, eliminate your competitors. This is where his risk-taker mindset was forged. So, let's connect these dots. An insecure, impatient risk-taker with burning ambition. Someone who recognized that if he followed the traditional path, his chance would never arrive in his lifetime. Mohammed bin Salman was nowhere near the Saudi succession line. Not even remotely close. But then he discovered an ally who would pave his path forward, King Salman bin Abdulaziz himself. Very few people realize that MBS's true power source is his father's unwavering faith in him. King Salman shattered every tradition, every established protocol, to clear the way for his son. And his first move left everyone stunned. The moment he became king, he appointed MBS as the nation's Minister of Defense. Yes, in a country like Saudi Arabia, the defense portfolio of the Muslim world's most powerful nation was handed to a 29-year-old. Everyone was shocked. But the show was just beginning. Within days, MBS was also named head of the Council for Economic and Development Affairs, which meant the nation's economy, oil policy, and authority over every major initiative were now controlled by this young man. The moment was approaching. Behind the scenes, circumstances were gradually aligning in MBS's favor. And then, the real game commenced. The next-level challenge appeared. Only 3 months after King Salman's coronation, in April 2015, the first bombshell exploded. Through a royal decree, he removed Crown Prince Mohammed bin Abdulaziz from the succession and appointed Mohammed bin Naif as the new Crown Prince, and who occupied the now vacant Deputy Crown Prince position. Exactly. MBS, in one swift move, he had positioned himself second in line to power. For the following 2 years, MBS wielded his authority like a master craftsman. He consolidated control over the military, tightened his grip on the economy, and manipulated the media to his advantage. Mohammed bin Salman crafted his own persona, the identity of a reformer, a prince who makes things happen, someone challenging the archaic and inefficient bureaucracy. And then, that fateful night arrived. June 2017. Overnight, a palace coup unfolded. A bombshell detonated, and the landscape transformed completely. King Salman dismissed his nephew and the all-powerful Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Naif, Reports suggest that MBN was summoned to the palace and placed under house arrest. He was pressured relentlessly and ultimately forced to resign. The man who was the country's second most powerful figure just yesterday, America's preferred candidate, was reduced to a captive, and who stepped into MBN's position as the new crown prince. Yes, you guessed correctly, Mohammed bin Salman. At merely 31 years old, it was an extraordinarily quiet yet brutally ruthless coup. MBS had systematically eliminated every obstacle, every rival from his trajectory, one by one. In reality, he had become more powerful than the actual king, and was the nation's genuine and sole ruler. And then MBS unveiled a new dream to the world, a vision that might become reality, or perhaps transform into a magnificent mirage. Upon seizing power, MBS presented a massive, spectacular, and extraordinarily expensive initiative, titled Vision 2030. This wasn't merely a project. It was a dream of a transformed Saudi Arabia. The fundamental concept of this vision is to revolutionize Saudi Arabia. Yes, this was the Saudi interpretation of the change slogan, with its primary objective being to eliminate the Saudi economy's dependence on oil, meaning Saudi Arabia wouldn't just export oil anymore. It would generate revenue from tourism, technology, entertainment, and investment. Yes, MBS wants to operate the country like a cutting-edge corporation, or more accurately, he's attempting to run a monarchy with corporate principles. Furthermore, Mohammed bin Salman is investing in Uber, SoftBank, Newcastle United Football Club, and other major global enterprises, not just for profit, but to expand his international influence. Then, for this new Saudi Arabia, the path MBS carved out is distinctly un-Saudi in style. It's the path of steering the country toward moderate Islam. All the religious constraints that had existed in Saudi Arabia since its inception were loosened. And then we witnessed a transformation that, just years earlier, seemed absolutely inconceivable. Women in the kingdom were granted the right to drive. Then, the changes accelerated. In a nation like Saudi Arabia, movie theaters opened their doors. Major music concerts began taking place. Entertainment festivals like Riyadh Season emerged, attracting renowned artists from across the globe. Formula One races and golf tournaments were hosted. Tourists started arriving, and even Medina's gates were opened to them. The Muslim world looked on in astonishment. What has suddenly happened to Saudi Arabia? Many didn't want to witness these changes on their sacred land. But why would Mohammed bin Salman care about anyone's opinion? He pushed even further, effectively stripping the religious police of their powers. Saudi Arabia was transforming into an open society. Mohammed bin Salman offered the Saudi people a new social contract. We'll provide you with employment, entertainment options, and social freedoms. In exchange, you'll give us your absolute political loyalty and ask no questions. To achieve this, MBS did something I would personally label as his most perilous action: promoting Saudi nationalism. The rise of Saudi nationalism. How was Saudi Arabia founded? It emerged from an alliance between a religious reformer, Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab, and the House of Saud's ancestor, Mohammed bin Saud. Their 18th century partnership led to the first Saudi state's establishment, and since then, the Al-Sheikh Mohammed ibn Abd al-Wahhab's descendants and the House of Saud's successors have governed the country based on one ideology: the foundation of Islamic religion. But today's Saudi Arabia, after 2.5 to 3 centuries, a new Saudi Arabia is being constructed that doesn't stand on its religious identity's foundation, nor does it draw inspiration from tribal elite. For this purpose, MBS is providing his youth with a new identity, the identity of Saudi nationality. And this is extremely dangerous. How? Let me explain. Every nationalist movement fundamentally does one thing first. It rewrites history, meaning it reconstructs it. Every nationalist movement believes its nation is superior, the greatest, the most magnificent even, greater than religion. And I'm stating this with complete seriousness. You might have encountered someone claiming they've been Muslim for 1,400 years, but Pashtun for 5,000 years, or Sindhi, or insert whatever nationality you prefer here. Yes, this is nationalism psychology, which might not be problematic in other nations, but it certainly is in a country established in Islam's name, whose flag bears the kalima. This is the same approach first witnessed in the Muslim world in Turkey, where Mustafa Kemal Pasha expelled religion. We observed the same issue in Iran under the Pahlavi dynasty's rule, which later sparked a revolution. We saw something similar in Gamal Abdel Nasser's Egypt, whose slogan became Nahnu al-Firan, meaning, "We are Pharaoh's descendants." And today, we're witnessing the same phenomenon in Saudi Arabia, the country whose very foundation was laid on religion, which throughout its history has maintained close ties with Islam, which serves as Islam's global center due to Mecca and Medina, whose ruler titles himself the custodian of the two holy mosques. Today, that same Saudi Arabia is being deliberately distanced from Islam as a matter of policy. Not overtly, not explicitly, but it's certainly been set on that trajectory. How? See for yourself. Saudi Arabia's National Day was traditionally celebrated with modesty, but in the MBS era, it's transformed into a spectacular event, with music performances and fireworks displays, with Saudi flags prominently displayed everywhere. Now, even Saudi history isn't being connected through a religious lens, but through the pre-Islamic era of ignorance. Ancient civilizations are being designated as Saudi Arabia's national heritage. Like Madain Saleh, the Hadith mentions that when Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was journeying for the expedition of Tabuk, his army passed through this very location at Madain Saleh. At that time, the Prophet PBU instructed his companions to traverse this area as swiftly as possible, because it's a place of divine punishment. But today, that same location is being presented as national heritage in Saudi Arabia. It's being developed as a major tourism destination. Why? Because such initiatives feed the nationalist ideology. This is an extensive long-term strategy that will further strengthen the monarchy and elevate the nation to greater heights. And to satisfy this obsession with greatness, one thing consistently proves useful: from the Pharaoh's pyramids to today's engineering wonders. You'll notice that every ruler wanting to establish their legacy, but unable to do so through justice and good governance, turns to one thing: grand structures, mega projects. That's why MBS also introduced mega projects, colossal ones. Projects so ambitious they boggle the mind. Take Neom, for instance. A $500 billion venture, a futuristic metropolis on the Red Sea coast where there'll be no roads, new automobiles, everything will be managed by robots through AI. Within this same city, there'll be a 170-kilometer-long, glass-walled structure called The Line. The entire world was captivated by this. The West began hailing MBS as a brilliant reformer and visionary leader. Saudi Arabia's youth were equally thrilled. They had hoped that Saudi Arabia was genuinely transforming. But is this the complete picture? Is there a terrifying darkness lurking behind this glamour? Absolutely! In reality, while there were discussions about this new Saudi Arabia, MBS was simultaneously doing something else, very quietly yet with tremendous ruthlessness. That task was to completely consolidate his authority and crush all forms of dissent. He demonstrated to the world that he wields an iron fist and a velvet glove, meaning an iron hand concealed beneath a velvet glove. The most prominent example of this iron hand policy was the Ritz-Carlton drama of November 2017. As I mentioned initially, a luxury hotel in Riyadh was converted into a prison overnight. Officially, It was labeled a war against corruption, but in reality, it was an operation to neutralize all his powerful adversaries in one decisive strike. Among them was one of the planet's wealthiest individuals, Prince Al-Walid bin Talal. Also included was the powerful National Guard chief and the former king's son, Prince Mutabe bin Abdullah. All of them were detained for several weeks. Reports indicate they were coerced into transferring substantial portions of their wealth to the national treasury and pledging loyalty to MBS. These weren't simply arrests. This was a message to the entire Saudi elite that there's now only one authority, and his name is Mohammed bin Salman. Now, anyone who offered even mild criticism of his policies was imprisoned. It was as if the decree was crystal clear. Either praise us or remain silent. Otherwise, face severe consequences. And we witnessed the most chilling example of his iron grip in October 2018. Approximately 2,500 kilometers from Riyadh, in Istanbul. Istanbul is a city of celebration. But this Saudi journalist was confronting a serious dilemma. He needed certain documents for his upcoming wedding but couldn't return to Saudi Arabia because he'd face arrest there for his writings criticizing Mohammed bin Salman. But the work needed completion. He contacted the Saudi consulate in Istanbul and was asked to come on October 2nd, 2018. But simultaneously, a call was placed to Riyadh, informing them the man would arrive on October 2nd. The journalist's name was Hamal Khashoggi, a columnist for Middle East Eye and the Washington Post, and Al Arab News' editor-in-chief, but his true identity was being an MBS critic, which is why he resided in the United States. So, on October 2nd, 2018, he entered the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, never to emerge again. His Turkish fiancée reported that Jamal had gone to the consulate for some paperwork, but the entire day elapsed, and he didn't return. CCTV footage captured him entering, but nobody witnessed him leaving. Where did Jamal disappear? Vanished into thin air. Saudi and Turkish intelligence launched their investigation, but discovered no leads. And then, several days later, Turkish intelligence made a revelation, a horrific revelation that shocked the world, that Jamal Khashoggi had been brutally murdered inside the consulate. The murder details that surfaced are so horrific, so disturbing, that I cannot share them here. In summary, after killing him, his body was disposed of, leaving no trace behind. But who committed this act inside a consulate? This was executed by a 15-member death squad dispatched from Saudi Arabia, which had flown into Istanbul from Riyadh on a chartered flight that very day, specifically for this mission. This squad included extremely close guards of Mohammed bin Salman. Initially, the Saudi government denied everything, but then the narrative shifted, not once, but multiple times. And finally, they acknowledged that Jamal Khashoggi was murdered, but insisted it was a rogue operation about which MBS knew nothing. Whatever the truth, the outcome was that Saudi Arabia faced enormous international embarrassment, and a stain marked MBS's progressive image that'll probably never fade. Furthermore, intelligence reports indicate that it appears the direct order for this assassination was issued by MBS himself. What's the truth? Perhaps we'll never know, or maybe decades from now. When we examine history retrospectively, everything will be crystal clear. Anyway, on one hand, MBS maintained this iron grip domestically, and on the other, he harbored ambitions to establish regional dominance. And this is where we observe MBS's foreign policy. Since Mohammed bin Salman assumed power, his foreign policy has been exceptionally aggressive. He wants to position Saudi Arabia as the region's leader, but his major decisions have frequently been hasty, like his first significant blunder, the war in Yemen. In 2015, as the newly appointed defense minister, he initiated a war against the Houthis in Yemen. He believed they'd be defeated within weeks. But this war became his quagmire. Years have elapsed. Billions of dollars have been spent. Yemen is devastated. But the Houthis remain, in fact, stronger than before, and now they're even challenging the U.S. and Israel. Yemen's current position and actions regarding Palestine have earned them considerable popularity throughout the Muslim world. Moreover, they're contributing to shifting the region's power dynamics following the Iran-Israel conflict, and Saudi Arabia can do nothing to counter them, which is why this war is regarded as MBS's greatest military and political failure. And that's not only made another significant error: boycotting Qatar. He assumed a small nation like Qatar would capitulate within days. But Qatar didn't yield, and after 3.5 years, Saudi Arabia had to retreat. In fact, by hosting the 2022 Football World Cup, Qatar constructed a magnificent global image for itself. Following these setbacks, we observe a transformation in MBS's foreign policy. The Yemen war taught him that a confrontational regional policy will never succeed. That's why, in 2023, with China's mediation, he restored diplomatic relations with his greatest adversary, Iran. This was a masterstroke, an unexpected move, but it demonstrates that MBS possesses the capacity to learn from his mistakes and can make difficult decisions for the region's benefit. Perhaps this was the reality check causing MBS's mega-projects to return to their realistic scale. The NEOM project, the line, has now been dramatically scaled down, where the goal was settling 1.5 million people by 2030. It's now been reduced to merely 300,000. And instead of 170 kilometers, the focus is constructing only 2.4 kilometers. This also reveals that dreaming ambitiously is one thing, but actualizing it is an entirely different and monumental challenge. Now, what does the future hold? Let's wait and see. Today, Mohammed bin Salman faces another major challenge once again. Today's Middle East is evolving extremely rapidly. Following Donald Trump's potential return to American power, it has become an intensely volatile region. The Iran-Israel war has transformed everything. What will Saudi Arabia's future be under these circumstances? Nothing is certain, but whatever transpires will reveal who the real MBS is: a reformer, a dreamer, or a ruthless monarch who believes power is everything, whatever he may be. At this moment, it appears there's only one word that decodes his entire character, and that is disruptor. He's someone who upends everything, who erases centuries of tradition, a person determined to change everything. This is MBS's authentic face. He refuses to accept the status quo, and he cannot wait. He demands results, and he demands them now. And to achieve his goals, he's willing to break every rule and every tradition. Now, will this prove beneficial or detrimental for Saudi Arabia? Where will it lead the nation? History will be the ultimate judge. What do you think? What's your opinion about Mohammed bin Salman? Please share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, then like, share. And for more content like this, don't forget to subscribe to Legacy of Power.